Hey guys, it's Deeds with Creative Retreat Kits. I already have a smile on my face. I'm so excited about this reveal of the Faith Art box for September. Danielle, again, has knocked it out of the park. I know you guys will appreciate all of the different things that come with the stamp set this month. There's words, of course, and then the smaller words for making phrases in your margins. The stickers, oh, so much variety, not just in the color, but shapes. I mean, leaves, crosses, circles. The beautiful words that you'll see on the stamp set are also used here in the sticker sheet. I can totally see myself putting those in my margins. And for fun, Danielle made another alpha using hexes. Only this time it's in a pink shade instead of a purple shade. Danielle also wrote the devotion for this month, and I have to say, I am trying to read this thing every single day. I love it. I love it. I love its purpose. I love how she connects things from scripture, and I love how she applies things with the reflection questions. It's just beautiful. And so that's going to be super encouraging for this month. And the bow, of course, I always have to sing about the bow. I'm not quite sure why the bow. It's just something that just comes out of me. But it's a single solitary wide bow, and it's going to go in my Bible for sure. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, here's a confession. So I don't usually prep my pages, like hardly ever. It's not something that I enjoy. It's one of those steps that I kind of feel like is more time consuming than not. And so I usually skip the prepping of the page. However, because this is an incredibly large canvas for me, seriously, I'm not used to working with an interleaved Bible. I found that it's a lot better if I prep the page, and that way anything that I use is not going to sink into the next page, which is also another blank canvas. I want to make sure that everything that I do on this side doesn't affect the other side, which is pretty important for an interleaved Bible. And when I start out putting this gesso down, I'm sitting here actually thinking, what have I done? I have no idea how to use this much space. I'm not used to a full Bible page, you guys. How do you work with so much space? I'm used to 2 inches or no margin space at all. So when I started this, I was thinking, what do I do to cover the page? I know that I want to work with Gelattos. And so after I'm done prepping, I grab my Gelattos, which are sort of within the same color scheme as the kit itself, and I just start like scribbling, and hopefully, you know, this triggers something, because at this point I'm like, I don't know, I'll just start coloring. It was kind of fun, but also a little bit nerve-wracking as I get started. This is also why I prepped my page. Gelato moves a lot better around the page with rubbing it with your finger or with a tool of some kind, or even a baby wipe, which is what I'm going to be using today. If you have a prepped page, there's no porous areas when you've already laid down the gesso. And so when I'm doing this with the baby wipe, I'm just very lightly touching the color, kind of moving it around. Afterwards, it just gives me that watercolor effect. It's not completely blended, and I have more pigment in some areas than others. And so it's kind of an interesting process. I picked it up off of YouTube from a fellow Bible journaler, and I liked how it looked in her Bible. So I'm attempting a similar look. I'm setting up camp in Judges today, and yes, I'm in the book of Judges. And I'll be honest, when I'm going through this book, all I'm thinking is just get through it, just get through it, just get through it, because it is part of the Israelite history that leaves me the most saddened or sickened or just downright disturbed. And I don't know if it's because I can relate to some of the stuff here, or if it's just because I am horrified by just how low humanity can get. And maybe it's just a mixture of all of those things, because Judges records, quite frankly, the depravity that you can see even in people that call themselves the people of God. The Jesus Bible prefaces the book with a pretty good summation of what Judges is about, and I'll just read a small portion of it The pattern of rebellion, judgment, and deliverance dominates each subsequent event in Israel's life. Over time, this pattern devolved as the Israelites found increasingly heinous ways to rebel against God's decrees, and their faithlessness necessitated God's judgment. The book consistently demonstrates Israel's corrupt nature throughout the time of the judges, beginning with the generation that followed Joshua's. In contrast to the preceding book of Joshua, this book sounds a depressing, hopeless tone that indicates just how far and how quickly the people of God had fallen. Now, I'm working in chapter 16 of Judges today, so it's not exactly the darkest and most disturbing time of Israel's history, but it's still very sad. I mean, we're talking about the death of Samson. So a little bit about Samson. He's not the greatest of the judges that were set up for Israel. His life is very much characterized by pride, arrogance, brutality, anger, sexual exploits. I mean, the list goes on. He's definitely a poor example of what he was supposed to have been. And he was consecrated at his conception to be a Nazirite, which has many different facets of a vow attached to it, and he broke them all in his lifetime. And then there's Samson and Delilah. And every time I read their story, I hope that it ends differently. I'm hoping that Samson will see through Delilah's fake charades. I'm hoping that he uses his brain and his God-given abilities rather than his emotions and his sexual desires to make his decisions. I'm hoping for a victorious end rather than a tragic loss for Israel's history. But it does end. It ends the same way every time. He is led away to the Philistine courts, bound, blind, bald, and completely weak. I mean, in the Bible it says that after his hair was cut, all of his strength left him. It was just gone. And so he's this weakened man now being taken to the courts of the Philistines. So as you can see, the page is pretty easy in its process. The technique with Gelattos is fairly simple. It turned out okay, and I was able to do a little bit of lettering, some sticker placement, and now some stamping. And this stamp was from an older set. I will link that below, and you can check it out yourself. It's on the Creative Retreat website. That's one of those things that I truly do love to do. I like looking through past stashes and older kits, older sets of stickers, and rummaging through just to see if something would work, would be compatible with the current set, with the current kit. I like that stamp. I think it worked out perfectly, and I'm glad that I had it on hand. Okay, so let's jump back into the Philistine courts. This is where Samson finds himself, and he's being used currently as entertainment. It's a sad thing, and I don't know what that implies. I'm not exactly sure what those types of cultures did for entertainment. I know some get very disgusting in their ways, and I don't want to really imagine what they did to him and with him to provide such entertainment. However, I do want to focus on perhaps what Samson might have been feeling, what he might have been thinking at this time. In his absolute weakness, Samson has a bit of maturity. I think there's some spiritual growth here in his life. Right now, as he is completely weak. He doesn't have all of his faculties. He doesn't have all of his senses. He doesn't have what he's used to. His world has been rendered upside down. And so here's where the crux of the matter is. As he is in the middle of this celebration, in the middle of this party that the Philistines are having, he's completely fragile and broken and weak. And yet the Bible records his crying out to God for strength. He says, "Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just once more and let me, with one blow, get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes." Then Samson reached toward the 2 central pillars on which the temple stood, bracing himself against them, his right hand on the one and his left hand on the other. Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." Then he pushed with all of his might, and down came the temple on all the rulers and all the people in it. Thus he killed many more when he died than while he lived. So a couple of things to note here. First of all, Samson is weak, and in his weakness, he understands that he needs to cry out to the Lord. That's a huge thing, and that's a very mature thing to do as a follower of God. Secondly, let's note that redemption is for everyone. Everyone can be redeemed, and God can call anyone out of their shady, sketchy, sinful lifestyle and make them strong for Him. He can take weakness and use that weakness to empower others to do what He has called them to do. It's obvious that Samson is not calling on his own strength to do what he's about to do, which is to kill more Philistines with his death than he ever did in his life. Similarly, we cannot rely on our own strengths, and I am so able to relate to this. Right now, I'm a mother of a baby. He's almost 6 months old, but in this time, he's learning how to adjust to the world still. He hasn't learned how to sleep through the night. so there's something that kind of works against me and my abilities to perform as a mother, as a wife, as just a functioning human being. But when I call upon God in my weakness, He makes me strong, because I am realizing that it is not of my strength to do what it is that He's called me to do. If I am calling on God for strength, knowing in my weakness that I cannot do it on my own, then He does empower us to do what it is that He has called us to do, things that He's purposed us for. In my weakness, in my weariness, in my fatigue, I need to be able to submit myself and say, once more, Lord, strengthen me. Just one more time, God, just give me strength to do what I need to do today. And we might not be able to bring down the walls of a court, but we'll definitely be able to, through God's strength, impact our world. Thanks for hanging in there with me. I hope that this was encouraging to you guys, and I hope that you have found God's strength in your own weaknesses at some point and are able to relate to this idea of calling on God when we're at our weakest and our most vulnerable, and He's ready. Much love, you guys. God bless.